Right, welcome to Sydney, Australia. We're here because we've been invited by Anton and by Baz to contribute to the Nuenen 2020 virtual rally. What we're going to do is show you 3 engines running. The first 2 belong to Benson. Adam is one of the foremost engine people in the country and is gradually becoming one of the most experienced people in the world when it comes to the restoration and development of engines. This engine was bought by Adam a couple of years ago, and I'm now going to ask him, what was it about this engine that attracted you?
The thing that interests me in this engine, it had an unusual curved base on it, and just the push rods on the wrong side compared to usual. Just features that you don't see, especially in Australian built engines. It's just something out of the box, something completely different. So I'd never seen one before, so you see something different, you got to grab it, haven't you?
Now, the engine was certainly not like that when I saw it at the auction prior to its sale to you. Why don't you outline for us a couple of the issues that you needed to handle to get it back into such wonderful running condition?
When I first saw it at the auction, it was missing the magneto bracket. The fuel system wasn't there, and obviously the water and trolley and things like that, but just the bare bones of the engine were still good. We had plenty to work with, so we found a few unusual features. This magneto bracket, it had these studs here that you can advance and retard the magneto, which I thought was a bit unusual. After doing homework on these engines, most of them were hot tube engines, and there's very few ever made with magneto spark ignition, so it's a bit of a unusual beast. So
when you say unusual, how many of these are there, to the best of your knowledge, in existence?
To the best of my knowledge, there's about 6, maybe 6 of these in existence. They only built around 12 engines, so there was not very many built. They were roughly constructed, very, very, very crude, but they do the job.
They were constructed in Bundaberg, which is a couple of hundred k's north of Brisbane, in basically a blacksmith shop, and very, very small numbers, obviously catered for the local requirements. Adam, there's something unusual about the governor system. Could you point to the governor system on this one?
The belt-driven governor is not something that we often see on a spark petrol ignition engine. Belt-driven governors in Oz are not very common at all. So this one actually holds the exhaust valve open with the flat on the fly ball, holds a exhaust push rod forward, and when it freewheels, sort of thing. So
now, I understand the last time this was rallied was at Maxville, where the Maxville club finally had assembled sufficient numbers to get a world record. Could you just let us know about that?
Yeah, that was the last time this engine's been out on the public field, sort of thing. We put it in the Guinness World Records rally attempt, and it was a successful day. It was a really good weekend. The club did well.
Now, the other unusual feature where I understand you had some difficulties was the height of the sensitivity of the height of the fuel tank. Could you just outline to us a couple of aspects to do with that?
This engine, the fuel actually comes in just above the valve seat. So if you get the fuel level too high, it actually, it pulls in underneath the valve, and it floods. It's uncontrollable. So you've got to get, if you're too low, it hasn't got enough suction. If you're too high, you flood it. You've got to get that nice, happy medium, and this is what we've found. So this is where it runs sweet and does what it should do.
Wonderful, Adam. This is a wonderful, wonderful engine for anybody to see. It's a genuine Australian-built, Australian-designed engine. Very rare. This one's running beautifully, and it's a real credit to you. Thank you very much for showing it to us today.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We're now going to look at the second engine that Adam has selected to show you today. Again, this is one of maybe 20 top-class, world-class engines in Adam's collection. Understanding he's chosen this one because, having been to Nuenen on at least 4 occasions, first time was for the slide valve rally in 2013. Adam's seen Ackroyds in Europe and certainly on the field in Nuenen. So he has selected this 1.5. Very few 1.5s exist, so I'm now going to ask you, what attracted you to this engine, Adam?
It was really luck. I was at a rally displaying an engine, and a friend of ours said that he knows where there's an engine that's in quite a bad state, and if anyone's going to do it, we better give you a shot at doing it. So I put my hand up and went out to a mate of ours' place out in Coonabarabran. Thanks, Russell. And yeah, this was sitting beside the shed. They'd actually rescued it 16 years previously, and it was just too much work for them. So yeah, they didn't have the parts and the know-how, the availability of parts to help them out. So yeah, it fell in my lap a little bit, this one.
So engine number 5886, how do you date this one, Adam?
I spoke to Ray Hawley in England, and he dated this it was 26th of February 1902. It left the factory, it went to the Sydney agent, and then got shipped out to a property called, I've lost it now, out near Walgett. It went out to Walgett. Yeah, and that's where it sat, and that's where it was rescued before it went back to Coonabarabran. So, yeah.
Now, like many of your engines, they certainly don't come in this type of condition.
Yeah.
Would you like to perhaps outline a couple of the features and a couple of the issues that confronted you when you first picked it up?
When we got it, there was a typical thing. The bearings had all been robbed out of it. Bearing caps were missing. A few castings, like the splash guard at the back and the gear cover, obviously pump and injector. But yeah, I thought, where am I going to get all these bits? But we ended up, the Canberra Club had one in their possession, and they generously lent me some parts, so it made life a lot easier. So yeah.
This is a huge engine for 1.5 horsepower. There's so few 1.5s anywhere in the world, but this is actually a transition engine, a transition between a blower and a more conventional Ackroyd. And just point out the couple of features to do with the blower.
There's a casting here that in the later Ackroyds they don't have, that I've seen they don't have this. The earlier ones with the blower have been drilled and tapped here. This one has never been drilled and tapped. But we've also got this bracket down low, right down here, that's part of the blower, where I've seen the later ones, they haven't got all this extra bracketing. So it's a little bit odd. So yeah.
Right, this is truly a world-class engine. It runs, as you've seen, absolutely beautifully. It has everything anybody would want on a turn-of-the-century type engine. So thank you very much, Adam. Much appreciate you putting it, allowing us to put it on YouTube for Nuenen 2020.
Beautiful. Thank you.
from Sydney, Australia. I want to introduce Denis Lucey from the Sydney Antique Machinery Club. Denis has been to Nuenen on many occasions. He's done extensive travel through Cool Springs Power Museum, the Technicum, and many collections through Europe and the United States and Canada. So Denis, you've suggested we look at this particular engine, being one of your favourites. This is a little 2 horsepower Geo Waller. Tell me, what attracted you to this engine?
Well, I really like the size of it, Alan. It was just small, and living on a small block of land, it just makes it compact for me to move around on my trailer, display it. That's just really just the size, and there's a lot happening with the engine as well. It's very busy.
And how long have you had this one, Denis?
I've had it since about 2009. I bought it off a collector, and and I've had it since 2009. 2 years in restoration.
Well, it's such a beautiful finish here. What condition was it when you purchased it?
It was nothing like what you see here now. It was painted, I think, a red and a green colour. No trolley, just the basic engine. There was no magneto, no anything, just the basic engine when I got it, that's all.
And what are some of the major issues that you found in, when you undertook the restoration project?
Alan, first thing was we had a bent crankshaft. Yeah, that was really bad. I had that straightened and re-welded so I could then remachine it, because the actual flywheel ended up being loose on the crankshaft, so I then had to get that rebroached as well. And this also had a skim taken off it too, so just to make it all look nice, because it was pretty badly pitted with rust. Also, the side shaft was really badly damaged with rust and pitted as well, so I made a new side shaft as well.
Right, and the bore and the rings?
Bore and rings, bore was perfect, but I did put a new set of rings in it, but the bore was excellent, actually, excellent.
These are often hot tube engines. This one has featured a Bosch 22. How did you make that decision?
Yeah, the main reason for that is there's an actual casting here that was on the engine. And I did toss around the whole idea of being a hot tube gas engine, but because of this bracket that came with it, which was came with the engine, that convinced me to make it a spark gas engine.
What features are you wanting to highlight for those interested in engines of this type?
Well, the first thing is probably the governing system here. This governing system is quite, it's very tricky to first set up, but once you get it set up, it runs as sweet as a nut. Adam Benson and Hector Benson, they helped me, but this now runs really, really well. But the main thing is, again, you need to have a good spark to make it work. The other thing was, last year when I was at Nuenen, I met up with a fellow collector, Martin Chamonix. He was able to, he offered to make this oiler. It's an original, it's a reproduction of an original oiler, and he was able to get this made for me, because that's the type of oiler that came out with the engine when it was first sold.
Right, so we understand this is one of perhaps 2 of this size in the world, and perhaps one of fewer than half a dozen Geo Wallers in existence.
That's my understanding, yes.
It's a wonderful tribute to you, Denis. Thank you so much for offering this up for us to be able to video for Nuenen 2020. So goodbye from Sydney, Australia.
Thank you.